Third wheel topic. Very important when dealing with new evolvement and understanding consciousness and understanding being aware. Uh, Third wheel is like a thing that we all know of in different many ways, but to understand it in the psyche type of way, which would basically be a psych, but having to do with the mental part of a human. Third wheel is more than just, a couple on a date with someone that don't have a date. It's basically what you don't want in your relationship. Basically, to sum it all up into a way of understanding that nobody would ever even possibly think to understand it in, it would be basically that in any given time when it comes to this awareness thing and knowing what you want, it ends up becoming that couples and spouses work towards something. There's a goal there. And everybody has this goal when it comes to a relationship. So when a third wheel is involved in your relationship, it ends up becoming a little bit of understanding of that third wheel, right? So when dealing in the psyche part of any type of law of attraction is what they would call it, there would definitely be a cause and effect that would come with the law of attraction. So things that people don't understand, that anything in any religion that basically have the same view of things, it's like they're trying to help, any person or anybody that can't basically find some type of solution towards their life being a little bit complicated. So to understand all this biblical stuff and to understand any guidance when it comes to churches, religions, even if it's Buddhism, it could be any of this, that in any country, any type of ethnic belief of anything, it would basically be to understand the third wheel. Because understanding the third wheel with evolvement and awareness and consciousness, it becomes complicated to any person. And dealing with this situation, it's like you basically lost your plan. You basically lost your foundation. You get veered off of what you were aiming for, of what you were trying to accomplish in the first place with your spouse, right? And so understanding it in a psychic type of way, which is going to have to deal with the psyche and the mind, it ends up being a little bit manipulated by somebody's limited or false belief. And it could be a slight indulgence in any type of law of attraction. So what this whole thing about, most people would understand Adam and Eve, right? It's like when it's understood properly, it's like you have two people that are in a relationship or a marriage, and any type of acknowledgement of that spouse coming from a third wheel, it ends up becoming like a test, like a temptational test, to where when we're dealing with naturality and science, I guess you can say, but what I mean by science is like things that maybe have been figured out that us as people don't understand, how life gets affected. It gets affected by the law of attraction, where if we start comprehending things will end up guiding ourselves off of our path of what we wanted in the first place. Now, for some that can't comprehend it, it becomes a controlling tactic that's not being aware of, right? And so when a person's not aware of it, it becomes a different situation to where one could be registering things from another person, not coming from their spouse, but ends up getting that temptational test to where it's almost like bait on a fishing hook. And so this is basically going to be a little bit difficult to understand, but if you're in this situation, you'll understand it clearly. To where relationships and dealing with marriage, they're supposed to be a committed, act upon both of them. And if anybody throws that bait in between those two, it's like, know what the bait is. Because the bait would be the indulgence of thought that the third wheel is attracted to either or. And that can be the most temptational event to take place in a relationship, right? And so this is where if you don't have all those proper understandings, where communication always plays a factor, of commitment, trust, not having all those behaviors met to where you can completely trust your spouse to make the proper decision, the behavioral issues of the other person is a little iffy. And so understanding behavioral issues, when it comes to that, it's like to understand that the indulgence from another person can definitely lead to more behavioral problems, more issues. So when a spouse doesn't have all these things in order, the relationship lacked of communication. Because on their worst days, it's like being able to handle the issues of complication, to be able to understand them properly. So there's going to be all different sorts of behaviors in relationships to where everybody's going to be triggered of things here and there, but the vulnerability of another person is basically going to be a factor in relationships as well, to where it's going to question you. Like, are you referring back to your own misguided intuition or thought process that could be affiliated with the third wheel? Or are you referring back to your actual spouse to actually get the proper response of what you needed to know in the first place? So, with that being said, it's like any third wheel is going to cause manipulation and complication, and it's going to mess with your psyche because you were veering off your path. Veering off your path is going to lead towards understanding and not knowingly, but comprehending somebody else's aspect of thinking, I guess you can say. And so when this happens, there's a misguidance factor to where a spouse is veering off of their goal in the first place. The goal would then literally be understood as possibly somebody else's goal. So there's always going to be a complication in this, and nobody's ever going to understand it in any type of proper way unless they actually know what they want in life and they're committed to what they're doing in life. So the fulfillment of flesh is very important to understand and discover within yourself, because it will lead to an act of, basically, as I like to explain it, as Baskin-Robbins taste testing, where they got 31 flavors and you're going to end up testing them all. But where is it going to end up allowing you to make your choice and actual decision? So with that being said, it's like, know what you want in life and know the values of flesh and know the values of material aspects, because we ended up in life needing to balance these two to be able to actually build a structural foundation for a committed relationship. And that was the goal in the first place, is to be able to build, a family and have what, any other typical person in a relationship would want to have, which is, a foundation and a secured family and secured living and all that stuff. So, when this happens, it's like, is a couple really unhappy? Are they really going through their things that day? Or is this their demeanor? Is this their initiative behavior? Is this their way of? And this is what communication is always about, is that every spouse or any marriage should have the proper communication. Even the littlest things, are important, because the little things that we all bicker about in a relationship, it's like, talk about them, understand them, let each person explain. There's, whoever has the issue, like, there always has to be that reassurance, I guess, but make sure to properly get that reassurance out of the other person in a proper way, like without any type of demand or attitude. But third wheel is important, because what most people don't understand it as is, when we're understanding what our higher self is what they call it nowadays. Our higher self is an act upon our own behavior. And so acting upon our own behavior, it basically leads to understanding that we have our choices and decisions to make. So in a relationship, there's going to be a masculine and feminine. And those are understood as people right now, is what I'm explaining them at. But if you want to understand them in a behavioral aspect, there's going to be qualities of the masculine and feminine behavior, which can only be understood or figured out in your own relationship. So when this is understood, it's like, you can understand where your behaviors are being act like, and you can understand yourself and you can understand your spouse, and getting to know each other. It's like, okay, like I can understand the vibe effect. And when you can get past and acknowledge the vibe effect, it's like, well, how do you become your higher self? Well, becoming your higher self in a relationship, it's like, okay. Either somebody's going to take control or somebody's going to have that balance and act to where two people are kind of understanding each other. But the whole concept of higher self is basically where you're taking yourself, I guess. because both of y'all have to agree on a decision to be made. And to allow that decision to be made, you'd have to understand what both of y'all want in life when it comes to family and foundation and all that, and then y'all both have to work towards it. So the higher self aspect is going to be making that decision and having those choices and allowing yourself to have the proper choices, because there's going to be many choices in life to be able to allow you to accomplish your goals in any type of relationship. Now, when you can't accomplish your goals and there's manipulation going on, you want to really think about like where that third wheel or where that higher self is coming from. Because if there's something that can't properly be understood in the comprehension part of the psyche, it's like you're gonna have to have that understanding of who is making the decision for you. Because when somebody's making a decision for you, it's like that's going to be a manipulation tactic in any situation. It doesn't matter if it's your best friend or if it's your favorite family member or if it's like anybody important in your life. Because nobody should ever make a decision for somebody at all, especially in a relationship. So basically, there should be no third wheel in any type of relationship. Because when this happens, there's a control issue, not from the relationship itself. So to understand this properly, it's like, who are you controlling or who's controlling me? Because nobody ever understood the process of understanding a thought process when it comes to other people that are inflicting your own thoughts and decisions and what you want in life. And there's many ways to be able to do it because it's a manipulation tactic. Not knowing is one thing, because then it becomes even more natural. But when somebody knows about this, it's like, not so natural. They would end up calling it, in modern way, the devil that pulls the strings, which is basically controlling somebody. So knowing what the devil is basically the demeanor of a person's behavior to where they're trying to control a relationship that's not even theirs. Because this can only be done in a third-party situation. So what finding yourself is all about is knowing if you're making your own decisions properly. And if your decisions are always scattered and they change and veer, it's like, okay, well, who's manipulating, right? Who's manipulating that? And so when it comes to that, it's like understanding that somebody is either trying to control you or manipulate your thought process. And so finding yourself in a relationship, that's like being able to understand both spouses, meaning your husband or your wife, because there's only two in a relationship. So finding yourself in a relationship is finding yourself to be able to allow those issues that you might not have had with your spouse when it comes to like trust and understanding and being able to be comfortable with not getting screwed over, basically, in your own relationship. So it would then be finding yourself to be able to do the proper thing. And knowing that the proper thing would be comfortable wasting your whole life doing. So understand what the third wheel is, because it shouldn't be a person. It's an actual behavior. And it's a very important behavior to know about because it can either be somebody controlling your relationship or it can be the marriage itself between two people that are taking control of their own relationship. And so understanding this is very important because nobody really understands what divinity is or what divine is, or if it's being affected, if it's being manipulated. Because it's very important. Because a lot of people don't understand this. That our issues in life can be caused by other people in many different ways. But to allow ourselves to understand it properly, it's like you need to understand yourself. And you have to take time out in life to be able to understand this, because knowing that you're being controlled by somebody is a very big problem in life. So to be able to understand these things with behavioral issues, it can be complicated. Because knowing that your behavior can be affected by another person is one thing. But knowing that your behavior can be affected by your own spouse, that's another thing, because you have the advantage of being able to communicate with your spouse. And it shouldn't be a scary thing to be able to do that, because you're basically devoting your life to your spouse, building a foundation. And so, why wonder, or why think, like, will my spouse think I'm crazy if I talk to my spouse about this? So it's very important to understand this, because everybody should feel comfortable with talking about their partner when it comes to understanding law of attraction and understanding cause and effect. Because the cause and effect is going to lead a person to not understanding why things are happening and why they may not have the best luck, or why things don't properly work out for them. And to always be wondering about that, that's basically going to lead to understanding law of attraction. And the law of attraction always needs to be understood, and understanding what is the attraction in your life. If it's flesh, let it be in your committed relationship. If it's not in your committed relationship, then you need to acknowledge that you are searching for something outside of your so-called committed relationship. Now, the other way of understanding law of attraction, if you are comfortable in your committed relationship with the flesh that you are with, is to understand the law of attraction as far as what y'all as a couple are attracted to in life, which would be the foundation that you're building for yourself. Right? So make sure to always, properly understand and get it right when it comes to properly building a foundation in y'all's marriage, because y'all have to be attracted to y'all's goal to be able to allow yourselves to get what y'all want in life. And then from there, it's basically going to be how y'all are accomplishing that, which is going to be teamwork and so forth. So these are like the two major things that the world has a problem with. Like probably over 80% to almost 90% of people in the world have this problem. And these are why we have so many type of what you would call organizations or businesses or groups or gatherings, whatever you want to call it or understand it as. It's like these are facilities that help us understand a proper way of having that hope, but they really don't divulge all the understanding. It's like inspiration, but not understanding how to get to the goal that you actually want. And then from there, you can also understand that psychiatrists and relationship counselors are the next thing if these inspiration things don't allow yourself to properly, I guess, change the way you may understand something differently. And so just to let you know that these two type of different things that the world has to offer us, this is basically like a multi-billion-dollar foundation where people pay or want to try to allow themselves to properly change in their life when it comes to how to properly fix their marriage or how to properly have the proper marriage foundation and happiness in their own lives with a spouse. And so simply it's like there's a way to save money in this world because it actually has nothing to do with money. It has to do with your own understanding of how to interpret law of attraction and cause and effect. And so always understand that the law itself that we're used to is one thing, but to understand the laws of the universe is very important, because when you start to understanding the laws of the universe, it's like understand that these are the laws that we need to basically comprehend if we're actually following them properly. And if they're not being followed properly, those improper things that are acknowledged that are improper, those are the things that you would have to question yourself about. Because those things that you know are improper, those would then be the main things that a person would have to work on or communicate with their spouse about. So, laws of the universe are one of the most important laws that a person or a human can understand. Because any human in this world, it's like, this is where we end up getting the effect of not knowing how we're getting the effect. Because it'll end up being a repetitive pattern that will basically just go right over our heads and not be aware of how to get yourself out of that pattern system. And being down all the time, it's like not the best thing to allow yourself to do. And to be able to properly understand how not to be down all the time, it's going to be the key ingredient would be the laws of the universe. So when it comes to all that, understand it, because it's a very important factor of a person's life, person's life. And even more important when in a relationship. So always know what you're doing in life, because most people don't know what they're doing in life. They're basically just walking around like zombies, doing what other people want them to do, or triggering other people not knowingly and veering off of what they want in life. And the reason why this happens is because we're all kind of wondering why am I stuck in this situation? And they're in that duh state. How do I find a solution? And they don't know how to find a solution because it's not properly being done. And so understanding this is very important, because when it is understood, then you can have an insight on what you're doing with your life and how to properly change it to have the proper effect, to allow yourself to be comfortable in life, to where you're not wondering, what can I do about this? So being able to properly do something about this is to properly understand also what you want in life. So knowing what you want in life is different from knowing what someone else wants in life as well. So I hope people can understand this, because it does get very complicated when a person's not used to understanding the laws of the universe. Because that's the one thing that a lot of people kind of shake their head about, and they're like, yeah, right. Why? Because we're used to other type of laws that we have to abide by. But that's just a secondary law that society had ended up putting together to be able to contain some type of system to understand right and wrong, and to be able to allow ourselves to properly not have issues to where people think that they can just commit a crime and get away from it. So there's a certain way to properly allow ourselves to understand, like, how to keep us safe, how to live properly, to maintain businesses, to not have that behavior to where people thinking it's okay to rob people, or crime factors, or getting away with things and stuff like that. So that would be a secondary law that we're used to in any type of law enforcement type of way, to help maintain and balance the world from having complete and utter destruction. And so that kind of is a different type of law system. So be able to understand the psyche type of law system, that would be basically the laws of the universe. So be sure to understand these things, because these things can properly, what they call, save yourself. And saving yourself is important, because that would be the main reason why people end up wanting help in the first place when it comes to self-healing, or self-care, self-improvement, or self-acknowledgement, or any type of self-love, or any type of stuff like that. So hopefully this kind of helps somebody or anybody, because this is very important. And billions of people in the world have these issues, and they're all looking for a solution. And the solution is in this podcast, and hopefully it's understood.